Imagine you're 93 years old. Your hands are weathered, your eyes are tired, and your body doesn't quite do what it used to. You're lying in bed, surrounded by photos of your family, children, grandchildren, maybe even great-grandchildren. The house is quiet, and you know your time on Earth is coming to a close. As you look back, you start asking the questions that really matter. Did my life make a difference? Did I use what God gave me well? Did I love my family, my friends, my church, the way I was called to? Did I live on purpose or just on autopilot? You think about all the years spent working, saving, and building. A career, a home, a retirement plan. You remember the stress, the effort, the wins and the losses, but now the numbers in your bank account don't mean what they used to. What matters most is whether those years were spent in alignment with your purpose. Because at the end of your life, the measure of success isn't in how much you've earned, it's how much of yourself you invested in what truly lasts. And that's what we want to explore today. How to live and plan with purpose. How to connect your financial life to the greater calling God has placed on your heart. And how, when it's all said and done, you can look back without regret and say, I lived the life I was made for. Welcome to Plan to Prosper, where we exist to honor God by equipping faithful servants to steward their finances wisely and build wealth that endures for generations. Okay, Logan, I'm excited today to talk about purpose.
Purpose is a good thing.
Yeah. I think we talk a lot about this in our meetings with clients is we don't think that money in and of itself is the end and the goal itself. It should be connected to a greater purpose because your money can help you along the way.
Yeah, if it's the goal, it just leads to anxiety.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was reading to my kids last night, and occasionally we'll do this catechism book where it talks about the various questions of the Westminster Catechism. And I tried it a while ago, and they would kind of get it, but they would kind of get bored. So I'm trying it again. They seemed to like it a lot more, just they understood it more. So I just started at the beginning. And the first one was, do you know question one?
Is in the Westminster Catechism?
Yeah.
I only know the one that I'm
not trying to get you or
have
anything.
for my kids.
I just know because I listened to Brian Sauvé's song.
Oh, yeah.
What is the chief end of man? Man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. So it gets into like purposes of things, and my kids loved these. The author uses, if you're trying to whiten your teeth, would you use white shoe polish? Obviously not, but my kids thought that was hilarious.
Uh-huh.
And if you're trying to toast marshmallows, do you put them in a toaster oven?
Right.
Obviously not, but my kids laughed at it. But I thought it was just a good illustration.
Yeah. And honestly, kids is like the best driver, I think, in this whole conversation about purpose. Like, I probably didn't think about this much when I was single, changed a little bit when I got married, changed a lot more when I had kids. And then you, down the line, grandkids and like the cold opening, potentially even great grandkids someday. You start thinking more about beyond yourself. And I think that's one of the big things that we'll talk about today is how your purpose goes beyond just me fulfilling my little calling in life in a silo, but how am I bringing the people that God's put into my life in this as well, and helping them in their purposes and all these different things. So kids are a great reminder of those things because they're in your house and you're talking to them all the time.
Yep.
Or if you have a toddler, they're talking to you all the time.
That is very true.
Yeah.
About tons of random things.
Yes. But without purpose, your money becomes directionless, and you end up probably spending more. If you don't have a clear purpose, you probably end up spending more than you should on things that don't really matter. And
I don't mean to derail this again, but I just want to share. Conversation around the dinner table last night was who would win in a karate match, JoJo or Elsie?
Ooh. Elsie's feisty, man. I don't know JoJo well enough. For those that don't know, JoJo is his almost 2-year-old, and Elsie's my almost 2-year-old. They're pretty close in age. That's a great question. JoJo seems like a brawler. I think she could handle herself.
She hits me every once in a while.
Yeah. Elsie's big brother, she deals with him all the time, and so she's pretty tough. But it's a good question. They seem like good friends, though, so I don't think they would ever do that. Kids are so funny, man. So purpose acts as a compass for your finances. It helps guide the ship, so to speak. And as financial advisors, we're always trying to help people think along those lines so that it doesn't become something that's controlling them, but rather they're controlling it. So one of the books that we've given to clients before is this HBR Guide to Crafting Your Purpose. It's a Harvard Business Review book, and it's just a helpful little guide if you've never thought about this before, and you come away from our conversation today and you're interested in learning more and potentially crafting your own purpose in a really specific way. This would be a great resource to you, and I'll quote it a couple of times in this conversation. But
do you know anything about the author?
No.
So the author works for Sovereign's Capital.
Okay.
And part of how he came up with the book and everything was because he was in finance and then got into this private equity investing, but with a purpose. Sovereign's Capital tries to do it in a biblically responsible manner on the private equity side.
Nice. I think lack of purpose is a big problem. And he talks about this in the book that there was some study that says like the majority of Americans don't feel like they lack purpose. And then he says that this lack of purpose often leads to isolation and loneliness, and that 72% of Americans experience loneliness pretty regularly, like even on a weekly basis, that there's just this massive void in their lives that they can't seem to fill. So I think we see it a lot in our culture too. I remember seeing an interview with Deion Sanders, and he was talking about how he was winning Super Bowls, and he's one of the famous players that played two sports professionally. He played football and he played baseball, and he won Super Bowls and also was playing for teams that were in the World Series. So he was very successful, and he said, I was winning Super Bowls, playing in the World Series, and I had no joy. I had no peace. And then he ended up coming to Christ later, and that's when he truly found his purpose in life. So I think we all certainly experience this personally to a degree, but I think we can recognize it in culture too at large.
Yeah, I just learned today actually that Emmitt Smith was another one that struggled a lot during early retirement because he was used to football and living that life, went to retirement and wanted to be successful in something else. So he got into some type of real estate and started to realize that people were taking his meetings not to learn about real estate, but just because he was Emmitt Smith. And he had to eventually figure out kind of what his purpose and values were in order to kind of let go of that football self-identity.
Yeah. He was only good because of the offensive line anyways. No
more Cowboys fans, listeners.
A.J. Brown, after the Eagles won the Super Bowl this past year, I remember hearing something similar from him too, that it was just like, yeah, that was great, but is that all it was? Like for him, I think it was more like, well, let's just get back to work and do it again.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens. But yeah, I think we all recognize this, that we all experience this in some way. I don't think many people out there are just like having fun around the clock 24/7. And that's not even really what purpose is about. It's not about just the maximum amount of enjoyment in life. I don't even think, like King Solomon comes to mind, that he speaks in Ecclesiastes about how he just like was able to live the most lavish life possible. And in the end, it was all meaningless to him. So there's something deeper here that we need to get at in our hearts that goes beyond just enjoying your life and connecting your what you do on a daily basis to a greater purpose.
Yeah, and I think when you live on purpose, it leads to greater enjoyment and fulfillment.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and in this book, he actually talks about that the key to flourishing is like this perfect balance of enjoyment and living on purpose. So he makes that distinction that these are two separate things that sometimes happen at the same time, that you can enjoy things that are also on purpose, but oftentimes they're not. So he uses the example of comparing like going for a swim on a hot summer afternoon is not necessarily like a purposeful thing. I mean, I suppose it could be if you're like a world-class swimmer or something, but for most people, it's just a recreational thing that you can enjoy. So there's enjoyment there. And then he compares like childbirth to it, which is not enjoyable at all as I understand it, but is deeply purposeful. So it's finding the balance in your life of enjoyment and purpose, and you have to be able to do both.
Yeah, yep. I like that analogy.
So yeah, people with a strong sense of purpose experience greater fulfillment and resilience. I think they're not as easily swayed when the inevitable storms of life come their way. They can weather them a little bit easier than somebody who's rudderless and doesn't have a purpose.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, easier to persevere through those issues that life brings because you know what you're living for.
Yeah. They make more aligned financial decisions. So the way that they spend their money is in alignment with their purpose. So they probably feel better about the way that they're using their money. I think a lot of people that overspend or don't have the direction probably end up stressing more financially than somebody that really knows what they're doing and is crystal clear about how they're deploying their capital.
Yeah, I was actually, a client came to mind. I was talking to a client a month or two ago. This client's very good at raising money for a Christian nonprofit. And he was saying that over the years, people have told him, oh, if you're good at that, you would probably be really good at like for-profit sales and your income potential could be limitless. And so he was telling me like, Logan, I know I would be probably a lot richer if I were, he used, I think like legal services as the example. If I was selling legal services, but that just, I would find no joy out of that. So I've taken this job, which I'm still compensated fairly, but nowhere near as wealthy as I would be if I were selling something much more profitable.
Yeah, that's a great example. And people that have a strong sense of purpose then are also less likely to drift into the comparison or lifestyle inflation because it doesn't matter what somebody else is doing around them. They have their clear vision for their life and they're like radically committed to seeing that through. In the book, he talks about like myths about purpose. I think people, I feel like people in our generation really struggled with this, and in particular when it came to their careers, that purpose was something that you would just find along the way, that you just stumble upon it as if it was something you found on the street one day. But it's really not that. It's something that you have to go out and you have to carve out for yourself. Another myth was that it's a singular thing, like it's just your purpose is one thing and you're ruthlessly devoted to that one thing. But the reality is it's a plurality of things that you are accomplishing different purposes in different realms in your life. And then the third myth was that it was a static thing, that once you have it, it never changes. And he makes the argument that it's something that should kind of be an evolving thing in your life, that your purpose at age 30 will probably look different than your purpose at age 50 because your life changes and you should be flexible with it.
Yeah, the first one I think is interesting, where you're more so kind of building it than just stumbling upon it. I agree, but I also think that they, like, coming out of college, I didn't even know that. I guess I didn't know what I didn't know about how to integrate faith and finance, but now I feel like it's very much a part of my purpose.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I kind of feel like I almost stumbled into it and then started building once I stumbled into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think that plays to the third one, the static one, that you maybe had a different purpose at the time, or you might have not defined it or anything, but you would have had something that was driving you in those times, and then something else came along and you were willing to make that change and see a new avenue towards a deeper purpose in your work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think more the idea is that if you're just kind of drifting along in life, hoping to find it along the way, you'll end up you're on autopilot the whole time and you're not really intentionally pursuing anything. And he's making the argument that you should, even right now, today, be intentional about and think through this question: what is my purpose?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. And not just hope that it finds you tomorrow or the next day or 10 years from now. Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." At the end of the day, we are ambassadors for Christ, and it's ultimately God that's working out his plan in redemptive history, and he uses us as means to accomplish his work here on earth. And I think we should whether we have a really crystal clear divine purpose or not, always hold it with an open hand and allow the Lord to do with it what he wants.
Yeah, that also kind of brings to mind, I don't remember where it is. I think it's Proverbs. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Yeah.
And the verse is more about like not receiving what I want, but more God putting desires in my heart.
Right.
So kind of aligning my purpose more with God's purpose for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was Augustine or Augustine, however you say it. I think it was him. If I'm misquoting this, you can fire me. Who said, love God and do what you please. That if you are truly following the Lord and not engaging in sin or habitual whatever, wickedness, and you're actually truly loving him and trying to honor him with your life, then what you please will de facto be what he pleases because you're truly honoring him with it. So I do think for somebody that has a well-defined purpose that aligns with the truths found in Scripture, I think the Lord would be pleased to honor that and not just take that away. He's not cruel like that. He would he'd be eager to see you flourish in that.
In the words of the guy that led me to declaring business as a major, you fired.
You fired. Is that how he said it?
Something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like that sounded a little too New England. Trump's New York.
Yeah, that's true.
From The Apprentice, for anybody who's unaware.
Right. So have you ever asked yourself the question, why do you want financial success? I think a lot of people would say to provide, so that I could be generous. And those are good answers. But have you ever gone beyond that? And actually even taken the time to write it down. Why is it that you want to be successful in your life? What are you trying to ultimately accomplish? One of the questions that we ask in our discovery meetings, and we call them see the objective meetings with our clients, but it's just the initial meeting where we get to know potential clients and get to know their situation, their financial situation, their goals, objectives, so that we can start to put together a financial plan for them. We like to end those conversations with this pretty simple question: how do you want to leave a mark on life? To prompt this thinking in their minds of a greater purpose, so that they can begin to connect what we're trying to do financially with what they're ultimately trying to do here on earth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we don't give them a heads up that it's coming. So you get a variety of answers. Some people who have obviously never thought about it. But then it's I think, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a good thing that I'm surprised by this, but I am surprised when people have like a very well thought out answer.
Yeah, it often catches them off guard, but I think that's a good thing too, because it at least prompts them to start thinking about it. And the way I always ask it is like, don't feel like you have to come up with some well articulated response right now, but feel free to think about this because it's usually, at least for me, this is like the last question I ask them.
Yeah.
And leave them with that to ponder as they go off about their lives. One of the other ways that I think I've heard your dad frame it this way is to do it similar to how we did the cold opening, where it's like, picture yourself as essentially on your deathbed. Are you happy with the way that you lived your life? I feel like I've heard that as well, where it's just like, imagine yourself on your deathbed and you have the opportunity to press a button and go back to being 30 years old or 35 years old or 50 or however old you are today in reality. If you could press that button and relive your life for the next 30 or 40 years, however long that is until you reach that end of your life, how would you then go and live it differently? So it's a way to reframe how you're living today, because for most listeners, you're probably not on your deathbed right now. If you are, pray the Lord, you've lived a good life and whatever. But for most of us, we're still in the middle of this life that God's given us, and we still have, no matter what age you are, really, you still have an opportunity to carve out a purposeful life. It's not too late. Yeah,
and if you are, we are honored that you're listening to us.
Indeed. I don't know what you're doing, how you've stumbled upon us, but we're glad you're here. So yeah, we have, what are some common answers people do give to that question when we ask it to prospects?
I feel like a lot of times it's family related.
Yeah.
Be good spouses, be good parents, provide. Even be a good employee at work, just be a good person. Yeah, just those things that people view as being good, whether or not they've thought it out really well. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong at all with those answers.
Right.
We're always happy when people at least have something like that. But I think the conversation today in this episode could potentially help to think even a little bit outside that, a little bit more broadly, in ways to craft a purpose statement that's really specific and goes beyond just what you might default to thinking about.
Yeah. I actually jotted down one of the ones that surprised me when I asked it, again, completely unprepared. They said, advance the kingdom of God and live out the Matthew 25 mandate. So, I mean, these were people that were not prepared at all, but they had a decent answer there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love when I hear one because, talking about your kids is natural, and I would hope that somebody that has kids is thinking about them in that way. But I've heard people be like, I've always wanted to start this nonprofit where I help. I'm trying to think of an example. I think somebody's wanted to help provide jobs for people that were recently rehabilitated from prison or something like that as a way to train them in both provide a place to live, but also train them in some kind of trade like cooking or I don't know, any number of things, carpentry that they would need around their location that they want to set up. And it was just, they had this vision for it. And I was like, that's really cool. I've never heard that before. So we do hear some cool answers because we talk to a lot of really interesting people. So the real value of this question is not in the answer itself, but in the reflection it sparks. So just prompting that to the client and allowing them to just ponder and think about it is, I think, the real value that we see in asking it in all of our meetings. I was listening to this session in this conference that I was listening to yesterday, and the guy was talking about his relationship with clients. He's a financial advisor too, and he had this line that I thought was really helpful. That your checkbook and your calendar never lie. So if you're listening to this, what your checkbook meaning, people probably don't write that many checks anymore, but let's say your credit card statement and your calendar never lie. What you're spending your money on, what have you spent your money on the last month? How has that reflected your purpose? What does your calendar look like? What is it filled with? The things that you do on a daily basis. Is that reflecting your purpose? Or is it filled with things that these things are just happening because this is the way it goes? How much intentionality is behind your calendar and your money?
Yeah, it shows your priorities. The money one in particular is the verse that we've talked about, where your heart is there. What is it? Where your heart is there. Where your
treasure is there your heart.
Yeah. Yep, that one.
Yep. I'm with you. And I could see where you were going with that. Some other simple things to think about or questions to explore is what legacy you want to leave behind, or if God gave you twice your current wealth, what would you do differently? I think that's a really fascinating question to explore.
Yeah.
A lot of us would live differently. There's a lot of things that we probably would want to do that we couldn't do now, but would they be purpose-driven, for lack of a better term, or would they just be, I really want to do that?
No, I don't have to pay attention to what I spend money on because I've got more than enough. Yeah, always making sure you know why you're spending the money or spending the time, whether or not you have a ridiculous surplus.
Right. So once you have that clearly defined purpose, the financial plan that we like to put together for our clients, or if you've ever had a financial plan built for you, that becomes the vehicle for actually getting this thing accomplished. Because you can use your financial assets in a way that is in alignment with your purpose.
Yeah, just being smart in various ways with how you can most efficiently achieve that part of your purpose by doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Can you think of any examples of clients or people that you've worked with that have had pretty clear examples of the ways that they've used their wealth for a greater purpose beyond just their own personal enjoyment and doing it even for their own family?
Well, yeah, I mean, you brought up the nonprofit. There's a client, young couple who mid-40s, and she wants to start a nonprofit. So essentially, who knows what she would end up getting paid, or it depends on the success of the nonprofit, but probably nothing for a little while. And so they've intentionally lived very well below their means because they're mid-40s and they want to potentially go incomeless for a few years.
Yeah.
Even less so. Pay out more potentially to start a nonprofit.
Yeah. There's another client we work with that has made really good money, has done really well, but has this vision of becoming a professor. He wants to teach college students, and he has this vision for how he wants to do that. And it would be like a tremendous salary cut to do that. But he really wants to do it, and he's built up enough in his portfolio to be able to actually accomplish this now. And he's going to move forward with that. And he's got this vision for how it's not just, I want to make as much money as possible. It's when can I actually make less money so that I can do what I really want to do. We talked about R.G. Letourneau on an episode a while back. He built this business empire, and it got so large that he was able to give away 90% of his income and live just on 10% himself. So we had a client who you mentioned the other day that out of the blue cut $1 million check to a Christian school that was doing a capital campaign because he loved what they were doing and wanted to see them flourish.
Yeah, very much believed in Christian education.
Yeah. We talk to families that want to give their kids like experiences beyond just giving them lots of stuff. Let's travel, and I want to show my kids the world, and that there's a lot of enjoyment behind that too. But there's enriching your children's lives with your financial resources.
Yeah. There was even one who came to us and said, you know what, me and my family, my kind of almost grown children, I think there's still one in high school, a couple in college, just want to live a simpler life and enjoy each other more. So how much would I need to essentially cut work way back, but then also just make life simpler?
Yeah. I've heard of clients that wanted to had really passionate about doing missions work, but didn't want to just jump into that and be heavily reliant upon donors funding it. They wanted to basically become self-funded. So working really hard now so that they can someday pull back on what they're doing work-wise and just go serve overseas or do the things that they feel called to. In all of our financial plans, we have 5 categories of objectives that we want clients to think through, and we put these in all of our financial plans. And when we speak to clients, especially clients that are Christians, we put these in all of our plans, whether you're a Christian or not. But we like to help think through the different ways that you can use your money, and how each of these connects to your greater purpose. The first one is the one that we like to start with is giving.
Just because it should be a priority.
Yeah, we think giving of the first fruits, not whatever's left over. So
Right.
we start there.
And it helps you not focus on yourself.
Right.
With money.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of the first, another way to prompt you towards thinking about something outside of yourself.
Yep.
Breaking
that money as the end.
Right. Saving. So this is a big piece of it too. This is how you do the ant, so to speak, in summertime, preparing for winter by getting your ducks in a row, not so that you can do your purpose later. We believe you can do your purpose every single day, but the way that you save says a lot about how you're trying to use your money for your purpose too. Because if you're just spending all of your money, you're probably not living super on purpose, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and even if you're living on purpose, you can be thrown curveballs that require some amount of savings.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why saving is an important thing. It's not just to prevent future emergencies or fund retirement. It funds your future ventures that you want to do that's connected to your purpose. There's so many reasons why saving is a habit that you should be in if you're earning money right now. The next one would be spending. So we're not against spending at all. And that's part of that when we were talking about balancing purpose and enjoyment. The things you spend your money on, obviously there's needs. You need to live in a house and eat food and stuff. But you can also spend money on things that are enriching and enjoy. Like you can enjoy the resources.
Rejuvenate you, yeah.
Next one is protecting. So,
which we're going to talk a lot about that next episode,
next
right?
week, I think. Yeah, we're going to have our friend Chris on the podcast to talk about that, which I'm really excited about. But it's basically insurance conversations.
Right. Yeah,
because
protecting your family from the most tragic curveballs.
Exactly, because if you're in the height of your earning years right now, you probably haven't built up a portfolio large enough to self-insure that if you were to suddenly pass away, that your family could live off of. Maybe you have, and if you have, that's fine. That's the ultimate goal, is to become self-insured. That's pretty much what retirement is you're self-insured to live the rest of your life off of what you've built. But for those of us that are not there yet, we need some level of insurance to just in case, make sure that if something were to happen, our family is not in dire straits.
Yep.
And then what's the last one?
Last one is investing. So you've covered all the other 4. Start investing. And we think that there's a lot of purpose there as well.
Indeed.
A lot more purpose than just achieving incredible returns.
Right.
Yeah. Investment returns.
Right. So yeah, I mean, a good example of that would be going back and listening to our episode on faith-based investing.
Yeah.
I forget what episode it is, but it was a couple episodes ago. Maybe more than a couple at this point, but we did a whole deep dive into why we love faith-based investing as believers, and why we think that that's an important thing for everybody to at least consider. Whether you have that same conviction or not, it's at least something that's worth pondering and wrestling with.
Yeah, I was actually watching, it was like a 60-second video that Tim Tebow recently put out on the things other than ROI, return on investment, that can be achieved through investing, which was interesting. Cool that he's going down that path.
Yeah, because he's with Eagle Venture, right? Yeah. That's great. I also briefly just kind of circling back on the budgeting conversation. We talked about this when we did our money and marriage episode, but this helps align your spending with what matters most too. So this isn't necessarily a category of an objective that we talk about, but it's a way to think through all of these categories, because if you don't have a super crystal clear budget, that's okay. But if you don't have even an idea of what your budget looks like, it's going to be hard to give. It's going to be hard to save and spend and protect and invest if you don't have budgeted at least some degree of an idea of I'm saving 20%, I'm giving 10%, I'm spending X percent, and I'm buying this amount of insurance, whatever that might be. A budget helps you deploy your resources on a monthly basis in a way that can help you make sure that you're thinking through all these things properly.
Yeah. Yep.
We also talk about legacy planning in our meetings with clients, and we did a whole episode on that a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, two or three.
Where we looked at the estate plans of 2 biblical kings. But this is a way to really connect your purpose too with your financial life, because you're thinking certainly beyond yourself at this point, because you're not even going to be around when it's all said. Like the things you do in legacy planning or estate planning by default are things that are going to happen when you're dead. So
right.
This is a really good way to think about your purpose too.
Yeah. Part of that is a legacy letter that we offer all clients. It's actually interesting. I attended a seminar workshop today where the speaker was helping people figure out what their values are. And he went into his story of why he got into this. And when he was 3 years old, his 32-year-old mother died of cancer. But she left, she also had a 5-year-old. She left an 8-page handwritten letter to the 2 of them and left it up to her husband to decide when to give it to them. Oof. So he got it at 10. And he said ever since then, he's just kind of been going down this road, this path of living by your values.
Oh my goodness, that's heart-wrenching.
Yeah. But I think a good example of the legacy she left through a letter.
Yeah, of course. And what a incredible woman to think to do that in a season like that. But I just can't help but think about, I've got kids now, I've got a wife. If I've got a 3-year-old, man, that's just, it's a really sad thought. But yeah, we partner with this organization called Legacy Letters, that the guy who started a similar thing happened where his dad passed away tragically, but just so happened to have written a really beautiful letter to his son. And now this son is on a mission to help parents, millions of parents, write legacy letters to their kids so that they have something to pass on. So yeah, listen to our episode on estate planning. It was, I think, pretty helpful, a way to think about your money beyond yourself. A few scripture references that kind of tie in the idea of purpose. We talked about Joseph, I think it was our last episode, who managed all the resources of Egypt during the years of abundance to prepare for the famine. And he did it with a redemptive purpose. It was saving other people's lives, and he was able to not just protect himself, but protect an entire nation and others from even outside the nation.
Yeah.
Other examples, Esther, the Esther 4:14. She was put in that seat for such a time as this, where she could help save the lives of her people.
And doing it in a very uncomfortable situation.
Extremely, yeah. If you haven't read Esther in a while, go back and read it. It's actually the only book in the Bible that never mentions the word God.
Yeah.
Strangely enough.
I think it was debated as to whether or not, for that reason,
it might be, yeah.
whether or not it was supposed to be scripture.
Well, I think it's a great example of how God works. I mean, his sovereign hand over that entire situation. Is that it's been a little while since I've read Esther, but that's Haman.
Yep.
Wicked Haman, who builds the gallows for Mordecai, who's Esther's cousin or uncle. Some family.
One of them.
One family. We should have read this beforehand. But he builds the gallows for him, and then when the plot is uncovered, as Esther reveals it to the king, who gets hung on those gallows? Haman. So, love that story.
Yeah.
Paul in Acts 20 says that I consider my life worth nothing if only I may finish the race. So he had a clear purpose too. He was perfectly content with imprisonment, beatings, whatever came. He had a vision from God to go accomplish it, and he was going to come hell or high water. Am I allowed to say that? He was going to do what he was going to do.
Yeah. I also thought of Noah, who had a purpose for a while that was just absolutely scoffed at. But it was clear to him, so he kept doing it.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We could probably think of like 1,000 examples in Scripture. Those are just the first ones that came to mind. But yeah, there's
Moses.
Yeah.
Wasn't comfortable.
True. He wasn't even comfortable with his plan. He wanted God to get him out of there, but God was like, no, you will do it. Jonah, he resisted. He gave him this purpose, and he was like, no, thank you. I don't want to do it. And God's like,
I'm doing the opposite.
You will do it. That's another great story. I feel like all the stories that you kind of learn as a kid that are just like really memorable stories, Jonah being swallowed by the fish and all these things, are actually like when you become an adult, you're just like, whoa, like those aren't just kid stories. These are like insanely ridiculous examples of how sovereign God is, how loving God is, that he will do what he's going to do no matter what.
And like David and Goliath, I feel like Sunday school and Christian school teachers always gave the version where it went just to where David kills Goliath, but then no further.
Yeah, or maybe he doesn't even kill him, just knocks him down with a stone. He definitely doesn't cut his head off afterwards. Scripture's pretty fun. So biblical stewardship always ties the provision that God's given you to purpose. And I think what we want to see when we talk about all these things on the podcast always is connecting your financial resources with what God is calling you to do and just being a good steward of it. Your calling isn't separate from your financial life. It's revealed through it. So the things you see in Scripture are the ways to tie in your financial purpose with your financial life.
Yeah.
All right. Any other Scripture thoughts before we move on?
I mean, I'm sure there are plenty, but...
Yeah. So let's talk about practically, how do you craft a purpose statement? We would encourage anybody listening to try this week. See if you can actually write one down and put it on paper. And, again, it's not a static thing. It doesn't have to stay like that forever, but let's at least start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think there are ways to start by like what gives you energy, but also just what do you feel like you're naturally good at.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's both what you're naturally good at and what you are aspiring to be better at. You can kind of craft it and kind of balance those two as you're crafting. Yeah.
And he talks in the book about inviting other people in too, like assembling some kind of crew to speak into your life too, because you might think you're good at one thing or think you're not good at one thing, and somebody that knows you really well, like your spouse or a good friend or your pastor or something, could be like, brother, I see you as a really good counselor, that I've seen you speak to people in our church that are going through a hard thing, and you're really, really gifted at that. You might go, what? Me? I've never heard that before. But now that gives me something to think about, as I could maybe utilize that as part of my purpose. So inviting others into the conversation would be helpful too.
Yeah. Another part of this seminar that I went to, he was talking about being self-aware. And 95% of Americans believe they're self-aware. But after they did these, surveys where both the participant answered and somebody else answered on their behalf, the numbers closer to 10 to 15% are actually self-aware.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, we need other people to speak into our lives every once in a while, or all the time, because we're not as self-aware as we think. So reflect. I think that'd be the first step is just first, before you start writing anything down, just think about your life. Think about what you enjoy doing, what gives you energy. Think about the things that you feel like you're good at, that you've heard other people comment like, hey, that was a really helpful thing that you did there, whatever. And then think about, okay, given that, what legacy do I want to leave? If I were to die tomorrow, what would the obituary say?
Yeah. And those that are eulogizing you.
Yes. Yeah, maybe you could write your own eulogy and be honest with it and say, like, if you hadn't, it's morbid, but write what your eulogy would say today. If you were to die tomorrow and somebody had to give it, what would they say now? Is it the life you want to live? Obviously, people are going to be kind of nice in a eulogy. They're not going to trash you, but
right. Hopefully, if they do, you were really bad.
Yes, yeah. So after you reflect a little bit, think about it, and then get out a piece of paper and maybe not a pen, maybe a pencil, so you can change it. But start writing some things down and make it as simple as my purpose is so that I can blank. So an example we wrote was, my purpose is to equip others to be faithful stewards so that they may live free and generous lives. That's kind of our purpose on the podcast, as we say at every episode, is welcome to Plan to Prosper. We exist to honor God by helping faithful servants steward their finances wisely and build wealth that endures for generations. That's what we try to accomplish here on this podcast. It's a very specific thing for this hour that we speak every single week. That's our purpose here. But beyond that, you and me, we both have our own lives that we live too, that extend beyond what we do here on the podcast.
Yeah.
So start writing some stuff down and get specific about it. Don't make it so broad that it's like, well, yeah. Like, you can't just cop out and say, my purpose is to glorify God. That's great, but you can't just leave it there.
Right.
Of course, that should be the undercurrent of all of it.
Yeah. Because you can use plenty. I mean, people could say, oh, and I do it by playing video games all day. Like, there's you gotta get specific.
Yes.
There was also a helpful exercise that I learned today at this seminar that I went to, that I think I'm going to start doing more, just based on different areas of life that you want to be better at, including purpose. And it's continue, start, and stop. And it's just listing out things that you should continue doing.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to be better at this, or just continue working in this way, things that you should start doing, and then things that you need to stop doing.
That's great. Yeah, in the book, he also has this quadrant that he put together, and it goes back to that balance of enjoyment and purpose. And so if you have a quadrant, in the top left, or on the top line across, is purposeful work. And then it could either be drudgery or it could be flourishing work. So it's work that's purposeful, but it's drudgery and you don't enjoy doing it. Or it's purposeful work that you are flourishing in and you really enjoy doing. It's that upper right quadrant that we want to be spending the most of our time in. And then the second line down is purposeless work. And then the bottom left would be misery. So it's just, it doesn't have any purpose, and it's just not fun at all, because this is hard to describe, but it's joyless and joyful on the bottom line. So top left, you've got drudgery work that's purposeful, but there's no joy in it. Top right is flourishing work that's purposeful and you find joy in it. The bottom right is superficial, where it's joyful, you're having fun in it, like playing video games, but there is no purpose at all behind it. So you can do some of that stuff, but it's maybe not, you shouldn't be spending tons and tons of time there. And then the bottom left is misery, because it's not, you don't find any joy in it, and there's no purpose to it. So let's get rid of as much of that as possible, and let's fill the other quadrants, mostly trying to fill it with the top right, which is flourishing, purposeful, and joyful work. So he says, jot down 10 to 20 of your daily or weekly tasks and actually put them in each of those boxes. And how much do we have in that top right that's both purposeful and joyful? And where do the other ones fit in?
Bottom left is probably doom scrolling, which I ashamedly do too much of.
You don't enjoy it at all?
I mean, at the time, but it can also just be mindless.
I know. That's the tricky thing is that, yeah, you can get sucked into things that without even realizing it, that you're like, wow, I'm not finding any value in this and I don't even enjoy it. Like what is the purpose of this? So I think it's a good exercise to jot down these things that you do every day and try to assign them a box.
Yeah. If you read random stories about countries that are setting up fake bus stops, it's not joyful.
I thought it was pretty fun. That was my favorite story of the day so far. I think you should review your purpose. Like once you jot something down, continue to come back to it. Again, use a pencil so you can erase it and change it because it should be malleable. You have another kid and that changes your purpose a little bit.
Yeah, so it might change throughout the years.
Yeah.
Or not drastically, but there'll be tweaks.
Yeah, hopefully you're not like jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing.
Yeah.
Like that's not what we're encouraging you to do. But be flexible with it. Allow the seasons of life to dictate the way that you're living your purpose in any given season.
In 20 years, it's not going to be, how do I raise toddlers well?
Yeah, hopefully not. But maybe. You never know.
We'll see.
Yeah. My wife and I were talking about that last night, that like we really are excited for our kids to not be toddlers anymore, but we're also really going to miss it at the same time. Like I look at my 3-year-old and he's a lot different than he was at 1.5. And I already miss the 1.5-year-old, but I love the 3-year-old. And when he becomes a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old that becomes a little bit more self-sufficient and helpful around the house, I'm going to love that. But I'm really going to miss the 3-year-old. And so this is both and thing. Like the kids will get older and you're going to love them always through it, but you will miss it. So I'm trying hard not to just get across to the next season of life because I know I'm going to miss the little toddler age. They're just so cute. It is my favorite.
And to your point, I was talking to the owner of Indigo Sundries, the soap company that I use.
Yeah.
And they just had a kid go to college, their youngest go to college, and they found out they're pregnant.
Oh, you're kidding. Not the kid is pregnant.
No. They themselves. So they have an 18-year-old and now his wife's pregnant.
Oh boy. That's crazy. Well, good for them.
So, to your point, in 20 years, maybe I still will.
You never know, yeah. In the book, this is the last reference I'll give to the book. He has this other helpful framework for thinking through categories of your life, and he calls it the Labors framework. And so it's an acronym. Labors. L is for love. A is for avocation. B is for beauty. O is for occupation. R is for religion. And S is for service. So just real brief, love is your relationships. Like kind of maybe think of concentric circles. If you're married, your first love would be to your spouse, or obviously to God, but we'll just talk in human terms. Spouse, then kids, then extended family, friends, church family, and going out from there, that you have purpose in all of those relationships. Avocation would be things that you're doing outside of your job that are maybe hobbies that you enjoy, ways that you're enriching your own life, learning new skills, whatever, things that are skills but not what you do for work. Beauty would be enjoying a sunset, going out for a hike, ways that you're enjoying the beauty that God's created. Occupation is naturally just what you do at your job, how you're finding your purpose there. Religion, obviously we're Christians, so we believe that should be the center of your life and how you live your life purposefully there. And then service would be how are you maybe volunteering or other ways that you can help other people. So I think those are helpful categories too. So think about labors, different categories to think through your purpose.
Yeah. It's good. I like that. Labors acronym. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, pick up this book. It's helpful. It's a good way to start thinking through this stuff. In closing, we just think purpose is a helpful way to align your finances with a greater meaning beyond just the money itself.
Yeah, I think it kind of in how we open it, I think it helps you get to that deathbed with less regrets.
Yeah, that's what we want for all of us. We want to live a life that's well lived and a life that's worth living.
And I would say you don't need to, you can live a life on purpose and be very financially successful, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
So you can be, there are different levels of wealth that you can have, but still live on purpose.
Well, exactly. And I think the examples we gave earlier, like the Deion Sanders, extraordinarily successful person, successful in his career, successful with money, made tons and tons of money, but was not finding purpose in it.
Yeah.
So this is not just about how much money you make, obviously. This is about what you're doing with it.
Yeah. Yep. And so I think a good challenge is just to think back on the week on the financial decisions that you make and decide whether or not it was on purpose. There are times where I'll think hours or a day later, did I need that Wawa hoagie today? Or could I have used that money in a better way?
Yeah.
It's a simple example, but.
Yeah. I always love this quote from Viktor Frankl. He says, people have enough to live by, but nothing to live for. They have the means, but no meaning. So find that meaning in your life so that you don't just have means of living, but you have meaning to live for.
Yeah.
Like you said, take one financial decision you made and ask yourself the question, does this move me closer or farther away from my purpose? Write that purpose down and see if you can start living a little.
Oh yeah, that's the first step.
Yeah, write it down and then ask yourself, am I getting closer or farther away from it? And eventually over time, I think it become habitual. You don't have to ask the question every single time you make a single purchase. You fill up your car with gas. You don't have to be like, did this get me closer to farther from my purpose? Got you closer because you got to work. Yeah. So that is okay that you did that.
You're not on the side of the road.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That would be bad. Any other thoughts?
I think we're good.
Well, thank you for listening. Send us an email. PlanToProsper@StonecropAdvisors.com.
Especially if you're on your deathbed.
If you're on your deathbed, let us know. We'll pray for you. And I don't know why you would be listening to us again, but whatever. Send us an email if I got some quotes wrong, because that's possible. If we got anything about Esther's story wrong, we should have read that beforehand.
I think you got it right.
We were close.
I think you covered it with a cousin or uncle.
Yeah, we covered the bases. And subscribe. Hit the like button. And keep listening. Tune in again next week because we're going to talk about insurance, which is going to be
with a special guest.
And he's great. You're going to love him. So thanks and God bless.
God bless.
Investment advisory services offered through Stonecrop Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. This material is intended for informational purposes only.